So the idea behind this talk is to get into a little bit more of the technical details for people who are going to be installing systems. They're architects or landscape, I don't know who's necessarily here. So I'm going to try to answer some of the questions that I've gotten or received to this point from people who I would consider kind of professionals in the trade. All right, so here are some of the first sorts of questions that I've gotten over time, and I want to be pretty clear about. So the first one is a connection to a wastewater disposal system is required. Okay, so these are not systems designed to get you off the grid. So you still have to have a septic system, you still have to have a sewer connection. There's been a lot of interest in something called the Living Building Challenge. I don't know if you've heard about it down here, but I hear about it. People in Portland talk to me about it all the time. They don't want to connect to the sewer. You have to connect to the sewer. So that's the first thing to know if you're looking at these systems. You have to have that diversion device. That's the other critical thing. There are no design requirements on that. It has to meet plumbing code. I'll get into some of those details. We've already mentioned wastewater from dishwashers and kitchen and garbage disposals cannot be on your Graywater system. The no discharges to surface water, groundwater, or stormwater management structures. There are some interesting questions that come up here. People are seasonally using rain gardens. The question is, can you put your Graywater into your rain garden? And the answer is that rain garden intended to infiltrate or wastewater or rainwater rapidly into the subsurface? I mean, if it's a rapid infiltration sort of system, no. The idea is you shouldn't put your gray water in there. But if you have a way that you can kind of seasonally go back and forth, there might be ways to make it. Gray water can be used on adjacent properties with the written agreement of the property owner next door, and gray water systems have to be planned and documented. That's the part that I think is really important, and I've tried to stress. These need to be thoughtful systems, and not just ad hoc systems.
What is it about washing machine water that's no good?
What's that?
What is it about washing machine water that's no good?
Washing machines are good.
I mean dishwashers.
Dishwashers. Well, there are two parts to answer that question. Number one is it comes from how the legislature defined gray water. The dishwashers are excluded because the legislature specifically only said kitchen sinks. Everything else from the kitchen is considered sewage. So that comes from a statutory definition. The other thing is, as part of our 14-person advisory committee, we had on-site wastewater guys and we had plumbing guys on there, and they were both, the two that were the most outspoken were pretty clear that they thought the dishwashers were a bad idea because they're very, very high in solids, and so they just are concentrating the waste.
Well, and also
so
water temperature.
And the water temperature.
It's really hot.
And also the chemicals that are used in dishwashers. That my understanding, and I'm not the expert in this area, but there are really no good dishwasher chemicals. Even the ones that are out there are less effective. So people who want to get clean dishes usually go to the nasty chemicals. Okay, we've covered this. We're really talking about subsurface irrigation. So the details about using this. So the first one is the treatment. And this is primary treatment. It's a physical process. You have to remove a portion of the grease, floatable, and settable solids. So this is for kitchen sinks. For kitchen sinks on the system. Now the key things are here. I don't care how you do it. I don't even care how much you remove. You just have to remove some of it. That's all the rules say. The idea is you've got to clean it up a little bit because kitchen sinks are going to cause a problem on your system.
So those little screens you put in your drain in the sink? Perhaps?
If you want
It gets out some of the solids.
to, it gets out some of the solids.
Doesn't get the grease
I've
out.
got one of those, and it's a partial solution, but I'm trying to figure out how to build a secondary filter for the rest of it.
Yeah, I don't remember if I put in
downhill subsurface.
here I think I do. I think I actually have a photo of a couple of ideas.
Kitchen digesters, the sand filters.
They weren't a legal source of gray water.
That's the kitchen sink. Oh, so that was New Mexico. Sand filters, I think New Mexico is using sand filters for
That
kitchen,
would be
they're
pretty
called
high.
kitchen digesters.
Yeah, that would be a pretty more of a type solution. So yeah, so there are different ways to do it. I don't care how you do it. I mean, the reality is you just says that you have to do it somehow, and we'll see what works and what doesn't work over time. When you're designing one of these systems, just remember that contact with gray water by humans and pets must, is supposed to be avoided. This particularly for that type 1 gray water that has no treatment. And you have to consider how you're going to manage this 2 inches of cover. Again, there are no requirements on how you do that, it's just that you do it. Site management things as you are designing these systems. You can't store more than 24 hours. Edible portions of the crops cannot touch potting, surfacing, and runoff. So we've gone through all of this. So here's the more detailed list of when you're designing a system, the horizontal setbacks between gray water components and what we call sensitive features. So we have 2 different numbers. One is for if you put in a storage or a surge tank, you have certain setbacks from that, and then you actually have other setbacks from the actual point of gray water release into the environment. I mean, they're just based upon kind of roughly the level of risk that was perceived with them. A couple of things. This has made some of the building officials and people get a little uncomfortable sometimes. There's no setback to building foundations, and people are like, hold it, they're gonna. We consider these to be an irrigation system, and if you need to irrigate under the eaves of a house, you are free to do so with your gray water. No setbacks from those sorts of things.
Question.
Yes.
If you're looking at a 100-foot setback, what do you consider a sensitive area?
What do I consider a sensitive area?
Yeah.
Well,
That's a feature.
those are the things on the left. So groundwater supplies, groundwater wells, springs, surface water, stormwater systems, underground injection control systems, those are dry wells, property boundaries, buildings. So those are the sensitive features.
The first one particularly, most city lots are not that big.
Yeah.
You're right, but how many city lots have groundwater wells on them? I mean, I don't know. I mean that's kind of the flip
We have a lot of
side.
springs.
You might have springs. Yeah, I mean, that would be something to be concerned about, and I suppose actually you could be up against the creek or something. So, I mean, those are all things to consider. These are all designed to protect those surface water and groundwater resources. So here are some more of the details of actually the design and construction. So the first thing is who has jurisdiction where? And this question comes up a lot. So the plumbing code has jurisdiction for all of your gray water collection system up to and including that gray water diversion device. I had discussions with building codes about this, and this is what they have agreed to. So everything up to the diversion device is subject to plumbing code and inspection. Everything outside of that falls under DEQ's jurisdiction, and we're trying to keep this pretty easy.
Can you put the diversion, three-way diverter outside that?
You can, and that creates that little interesting sort of question that came up. Well, then who's responsible for that? And ultimately, building codes. The guys in Salem said that they said that they would take responsibility for that, even if it was outside of the house.
One concern with that would be freezing, although you probably wouldn't irrigate much in the time when it freezes.
Right, but if that diversion valve is also what's sending your water flowing through to the sewer through that same valve, and it freezes, you're gonna have the same problem. So.
Breakage there too.
Yeah, it would be pretty.
Little building, almost like a pump house or just line insulation.
Yeah. So again, concerns that you got the right idea. So those are the things to think about. Uh-oh. What happened? I don't know.
Lost its power.
Gone. So I know that the slide that I was on was talking about the diversion valves, diversion devices, and kind of the common thing that I think people tend to look at are three-way valves that are often used for.
Check your little hand thing, right? It's something on there. Because it's on the screen. It's working on the screen. It's the monitor.
can gather around.
Yeah.
So the thing with the diversion device, again, that falls under plumbing code, but there are a couple of requirements that come out of the rules that DEQ wrote. One was that it has to be accessible. That's the idea that we don't want you to have to crawl into your crawl space to actually physically move a valve. If it's in your crawl space, you better have some sort of electronic way of controlling it. And the other thing is, particularly if it's a manual valve, you have to label it so that you know if you're in this position, it's going to the sewer. If you're in this position, it's going to your reuse system. So those are the two requirements from DEQ.
The light's blinking.
That's a positive thing.
It's green.
Yeah, it just started making a fan noise again.
There we go. There it comes.
Yay! Okay. So, and here was the, I guess, also in there's a kind of a point. Install in the house or within 2 feet of the house. That's ideal. Again, if it's outside of that, building codes will come look at it here. So, diversion device. Graywater treatment from the kitchen sink. So this is kind of that question that was coming up. We don't specify what sort of physical treatment and what it's going to look like. So it could be a commercial grease trap sort of set up. They can be expensive and they're not nice to maintain, but grease trap is an option to put underneath your sink. On the other one, and this came from the Graywater Action website, is a little mulch box that somebody had put in the backyard, and so the gray water flows into this sort of box, and then it spills over from the pipes in through these wood chips, and that's the way that they do the filtration. So it can be a do-it-yourself sort of system. I think that's going to be nasty to clean out, so I personally wouldn't go that way either. But sand filter. I mean, there are going to be various ways to do this. Yeah. So really, as a designer, you think about it. You figure out what's going to work the best.
So it's up to the installer to design the dispersion system, and you're not involved in rules for that?
For how it goes out into the landscape?
Yes.
No, it's pretty basic. I'll cover it, but it's basic. It's like,
So has anyone addressed the issues like with laundry and showers? There's microorganisms in that water.
Right, so that's where the idea of the subsurface irrigation comes in. So
And
that's why it's 2 inches of cover.
And you're thinking that's enough to deter the growth of microorganisms from that
Oh,
water?
you mean actually in the systems? Actually in the pipes?
Well, no, in the ground.
In the ground?
Because shower water and laundry water does have microorganisms
Well,
in
okay,
it.
so that's the question of, once you put those organisms out into the environment, they're going to have to compete against the natural flora that's out there, and biology that's out in the soil. Ultimately, they aren't going to survive. I mean, they probably are going to be outcompeted. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, the whole point in having a subsurface irrigation is so that people aren't contacting the gray water.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a barrier. That's the idea.
And has there been studies about if there's could be foul odors from it?
I suspect that that's not going to be a major problem.
Usually
But
that's one of the things when it's stored.
yeah, if it's stored, it will be a problem. But once you put it outside and it's oxygenated and it's out into the environment,
On the surface like an old kitchen drain would have been, with those flow.
yeah, I don't expect that there's going to be problems with that.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, if it's standing in ponds in your yard, that can be a problem. But you're not supposed to do that.
Put too much in one place.
Cross connections. So cross connections, you cannot have a direct, well, really no direct cross connection with a potable water supply. But if you decide or you determine that you have a gray water system and you need to supplement it with potable water or clean water supply, you have to have either an air gap or some sort of backflow prevention device. And you do have to go through and meet the plumbing code and talk to local jurisdictions to get that approved. And there are annual testing on those sorts of backflow prevention devices as well. Storage or surge tanks. You may want to put one of these in. Really, this is going to be a surge tank for the type 1 gray water that we've been talking about. Optional part of the system design, the things that we specify is that you just need to size it appropriately. So once you've kind of calculated how much gray water is going to be flowing out of the house at any one period of time, make sure that the tank actually can accommodate that. So it should be fitted with some sort of access control. I mean, the concerns that have been raised here, where you have kids for climbing around on things, or you have pets, or you have vermin that are getting into your gray water tank, things to keep them out. Just label it so that people know it's non-potable water. And then a big one is these tanks must be fitted with an overflow so that excess water in the tank can flow to the disposal system by gravity. So if the tank does get too full, it goes to the sewer.
So
And
it can't be stored more than 24 hours. How does that tank not store over 24 hours?
well, that's part of what you're going to have to design. So these are surge tanks. So the water goes in. I don't know if it's going to have on a timer that kicks on so that it flushes it. Make sure it flushes every
Well, that
24
one's
hours.
just open, it's got a hose coming directly from it, so it's
It's
just slowing.
always draining.
Yeah, so it's always draining, and it just slows the
Yeah.
flow down.
And that's what a lot of people are going to probably want to do this for. Because, I mean, if you think about your washing machine, pumps out a lot of water at one period of time. Put it in the barrel, and then just, the hose is going to slow it down. The distribution system. We're really non-specific about how you get the water from the house out to where you're going to reuse it. All we say is that you need to use materials that are appropriate for the use for transmitting basically wastewater. So
You can
whatever
use
works.
the black HDPE instead of the PVC?
It's
Yes.
if that is approved
Yeah.
for
Yes.
then you can.
Alright.
The other thing that has come up is people have asked. So we do ask that you that you identify the pipes somehow, so people know that it actually is not a clean water source. Purple pipe is commonly used to identify non-potable water in reuse applications. That is an option.
What, from the last slide, what is the setback requirement for the surge tank foundation?
I think it was 0.
0.
Yeah, I have to back.
Surge tank.
I don't remember.
No.
Specialty.
Oh,
You just, that one right there, it says
Tanks
tanks
have
have special
special
setback requirements.
yeah, and that was back on the.
Okay.
So that second column is your
okay.
surge tank.
So
storage
the
for surge
tank applies to that too.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it said there's a smaller setback for the tanks.
When we were talking with the city, they were talking about the concern of backflow if your sewage line backed up and it backing up into the house or whatever. Now, with the surge tank, would you have to have anything in between? What would be a special consideration there at all, if any at all, for like if the overflow is going into the sewer, but if the sewer backed up, would you have to have a
I suppose you could put a check valve on there so that it didn't come.
But as far as DEQ is concerned, you haven't designed.
We didn't say
part of
anything
that.
about that.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's an interesting concern. I mean,
I think it
I
might be a smart thing to do.
I think it's probably a good idea, so. All right. Their distribution system, irrigation system. Basically, it's, somehow you know that it's not potable water. So somebody's got a hose out there, somebody isn't grabbing the hose and trying to drink out of it. I certainly know that I used to do that as a kid. Grab the water and get a drink. So again, purple pipe is one way to do this. We've gone through these, but I always bring them up. It's just know your site when you're putting in one of these systems. If you're a landscape person, know the site, understand the site, know what the soils are like, understand the vegetation and what the needs are for water. Can they take gray water? Are there pH limitations? Know those sorts of things. So I just can't. I go back to that all the time because we're really talking about natural systems here, and you don't want to destroy your natural system by putting nasty things out there, putting water in an inappropriate location. We've been through this. You need a plumbing permit for your plumbing changes, and you need to get your DEQ permit. And that's really it.
Just on the plumbing permit, if the only change you make in your plumbing is outside the house, you still need a permit for that.
So,
I should probably ask them.
well, somehow you have to have, if you actually are making a hard plumbing connection to this Graywater reuse system, you're going to cut into your plumbing someplace.
But if you cut into it outside the house,
So, this was a discussion, I had this with the state building codes, and part of what they're supposed to be doing is getting out to the local building officials who has jurisdiction on these things. But everything up to and including that diversion device is subject to plumbing code. Because they need to make sure that is a health and safety issue, that diversion device, so it needs to meet plumbing code. So even if it's outside of the house, they're supposed to be looking at it. You have that look like,
okay.
it doesn't make sense, but.
Well, he just was saying this laundry. Ask him, because I believe he said that you didn't need a permit for laundry water put in it outside.
Right.
Considering that part of the appliance.
So, right, the laundry part, but not the other ones, the shower, the tub, the.
Right, well, he was saying outside the house.
I've got a situation where, 20 years ago, somebody put in a separate gray water line that feeds into the sewage system. I've also got like a drain field that's for my roof water. I could add gray water to that, probably, and the pipe that connects those two things would simply need to be disconnected from the sewage system and connected to the drain field, which is already a foot underground in a gravel bed, maybe with a filter system. But it would all be done outside the house, so it's pre-existing, but I'd still be cutting into it.
So you don't have a sewer connection, or you do have a sewer
I
connection?
do have a sewer connection.
So the gray water still has to connect to the sewer system somehow.
Right, but if you disconnect it outside the house and connect it to a gray water system,
So if the connection is
Do
outside,
it outside the house.
I would have to kind of figure out what the design is, because I'm not
Yeah, 'cause
quite
you still have to be
following.
able to redirect it back to the sewer.
If you don't want it to go where, into the drain field, you have to be able to redirect it back.
Right,
so
so,
we need a valve on it, and that's what they want to check.
The three-way
Yes.
valve.
Okay.
And he just said that he's really happy to help you design and work on your system or any which way, look at it. Review.
Review your design, not design.
I'm gonna review your design.
that's, we gotta be careful on that.
Do you have a printout of that resource information? I can't find it.
I do not. I do not. So was it doable?
So guys, I'd like to just take a moment, since you guys are the professionals. My goal here